Take two. See if this records. I hate doing these videos, but I also understand I wouldn't go to work with somebody unless I had a chance to kind of find out who they were. And also, I'm so tired of influencers and social media. I want to see who people really are. And that way I can make an informed decision if I want to work with them. And also, it helps me to increase my tolerance level. Somebody can be an amazing healer. My mother was an amazing therapist, and she had a lot of flaws as a mother. A lot of that was due to her generation, and some of that was due to her own personal history, but she was an incredible therapist. That didn't mean I had to be friends with her if I wanted to see her as a therapist. We have a right to know who we're working with, and also I think we have a right to exist with all this pressure of social media to be a certain way. One of my favorite podcasts is Glennon Doyle's We Can Do Hard Things. I love how she talks about things, and her sister and Abby, they talk about things as they're going through it, not afterwards, not a polished story. I'm a trauma survivor, I went through this, I went through that, and now I'm amazing, and I'm a coach. They're in it all the time, and they're finding new ways to work with things. And I feel so safe when I hear other people sharing their journey. It makes me feel less messed up. And then I don't put someone on a pedestal and try to be on that pedestal with them. Instead, I get inspired that if this person made it this far with those things going against them, maybe I can do the same. And it also helps me to be more compassionate, that maybe I find out something about someone that I don't like. For example, I have friends that speak in racist terminologies or anti-Semitic terminology, who love a president candidate that I don't love, but they are great people. And if we don't learn how to live together with different opinions, then we're looking at a desire for fascism. So that's part of it too. But I think the main thing for me is it's just too damn hard to hide everything and act like it's all okay. Plus, having been without a support system for about 17 years now, other than animals, it is really hard for me to carefully censor everything I say. And it's taken a lot of courage to show up as who I am, in spite of living in a bedroom community that basically is unaccepting of anybody who hasn't been here for 4 generations. That is changing because of housing development. And in a community that is basically conservative, fundamentalist Christian. And if you don't believe those things, you are kind of shunned. Not formally, of course, no one will ever admit to that. So there's no way I want to spend my time and energy trying to pretend to be a certain way in order to try to be accepted, or at the very least to stay safe in a community where one does not feel safe if you are not just like everybody in the community. And I'm sure those of you who are a minority of some sort, non-binary, people of color, wrong religion, wrong age group, anything, you understand what I'm talking about, how rough that is. The other part of all this hiding that really makes me insane is how dysfunctional it is. You know, dysfunctional families hide secrets because of all the shame and maybe even afraid of legal repercussions. And there is the question of patient confidentiality if somebody's coming to you for help. And then there's also the mandated reporting that's in place, which makes it hard, for example, if you're suicidal, to go get help because a mandated reporter has to turn you in, and then you have to go into a psych hold for 2 days in a hospital. So navigating all of this is very complicated. So what if I have had interactions with somebody who sits on the board of directors of an organization I know, and I haven't seen them as a healer or a teacher. And I know that they have a big drinking problem, and they had one at the time they were making big decisions as the board of directors. And when I bring that up, I'm criticized for bringing up a secret. But it wasn't a secret that was revealed in a session. Do we hide that information? Because there's people I know who drink a lot, and I still trust their judgment when they're sober. And I know they drink, and they're very honest about their drinking, and they don't hide it. These are questions that, I kind of struggle with. Somebody else that I knew kind of socially and does business with somebody else that I know. The person I knew socially presents as a born-again Christian and a celibate, who, when I would see them socially, would meet. All right, so we had a cutout there. So bad behavior continues if we can't air it out. But to me, most of all, what that says is to someone else, you're an idiot, and I'm not going to give you information because you can't sort through it with an adult mind and decide what you want to do now that you're fully informed. I don't know if this has been accentuated because of social media and influencers and all the presentation that goes on. But I can tell you, being energy sensitive, being a psychic, I always know when people are lying or hiding things. I don't always know what they're hiding or lying, and nor do I want to spend my time and energy finding out. But I do know that when I'm uncomfortable around someone, they're hiding something. And I do trust myself that if I hear someone has done so-called bad things to someone else, I'm going to check it out myself and make a decision. You don't have to protect me from these things. And I also know that when I'm in session with people, yes, that information is absolutely confidential and private. But if I see those same people in a social situation and something happens, those same restrictions don't apply because this is the person in public. I'm also bringing this up because I think it's time we stop trying to work with people that we think are perfect. I want to work with someone where I know their problems, current and past. That helps me to understand who they are. It humanizes them. In other words, if someone's helping me, I don't expect them to be perfect and then hold them responsible if things go wrong. Instead, I know who I'm working with, and that helps me to figure out how much their advice or where they're taking me works for me or doesn't work for me at the time. It also allows me to talk to them much more honestly and more intimately rather than trying to formally match their presentation. So I guess I'm trying to encourage people to see if you can find out more who you work with. Also, don't be afraid to find out who your friends are and your neighbors and what they're really into and what they're doing. I remember there's a case out here in the Inland Empire with a family that had like 11 kids that were chained up in bedrooms, and all the neighbors knew something was very, very wrong and no one said a word. Why not say a word? Why not let it be investigated? And if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. I don't know where this culture came of mind your own business, keep your mouth shut. It kind of like how genocide is allowed to happen and the camps in Germany are allowed to happen and all sorts of other bad things because nobody really wants to say anything or get involved. Perhaps some of it is that you have your own shame, that if you look too closely at other people, they might look too closely at you, or you might look too closely at yourself. I think that is really kind of the root of all of this. We make this pact. I'll pretend I'm okay, and you pretend you're okay, and we're going to go buy more stuff together and drink in the afternoon and have a barbecue, and life is great. And for some people, that might be the level of life they want to live, and I'm okay with that. They're just not my people. Those are not my people. The other part about not knowing someone is that if you idolize someone or put them on a pedestal, the moment they screw up, you're going to kill them. And I know that happened to me a lot. When I started doing this work publicly, people decided to make me amazing and powerful and magical, and then they wanted that from me. So I became an object of desire, an enemy. People would suck up to me so they could like be on my inner circle, which I don't have, or be in my favorite circle, which I don't have. And then if I screwed up, oh my God, like a pack of hungry wolves, they would jump on me. Horrible, absolutely horrible. It took a few years to undo that. And what I mean by undo that was to break down that tendency without making myself too vulnerable so I wouldn't get slaughtered, so to speak. I always talk about people going to 12-step meetings because whether you like the 12-step program or not, it is the only place I know that's affordable for you to show up honestly. And all people say is, thank you for sharing, or we heard you. No advice is given. There's no crosstalk. You're anonymous. If you go on Zoom, you don't even have to put your real name up or a face. You can actually call in and talk that way. And you can get your nervous system used to being honest and vulnerable and revealing parts of yourself that you're ashamed of and that you hide. Because when we're walking around with a lot of hidden things and a lot of shame, people are going to inadvertently tread on that shame, and you're going to turn around and try to kill them because they just hit a sore spot that they didn't know you had, that maybe you didn't know you had. So practicing honesty is a practice. Your nervous system has to get used to it. Your neurology, your brain chemistry has to get used to it. And your community will have to get used to you being different, that instead of faking it till you make it or presenting, and when people present, the boundaries that set up is, I'm presenting, so you need to present too. And we'll all present and we'll all get along. And in some places that might be appropriate. You know, a staff meeting, a big company meeting, the Republican or Democratic convention, you know, that might be appropriate. I'm not talking about places like that. I'm talking about organizations that say they're here to help people or educate people. Places that want to have some kind of community and encourage people in their development of authenticity and our ability to handle being authentic and being around authentic people. I think it's okay also to understand that you may not like a person, but they may be a great teacher for you. And you may also love someone as a teacher and love them as a person. We can make those distinctions. It doesn't have to be all one package. We can also love somebody and then hit a period where we don't love them that much because we're different or they're different. Maybe they're going through something. I remember as a professor, it was really hard to get support. I was, you know, the professor, and I'm not talking about inappropriate support from students. I'm talking about having to maintain a certain image and distance. Whereas some students who did get to know me, typically more so after they were finished a class with me, they found it to be such a relief that someone they admired didn't seem to be so untouchable, meaning they could also be that kind of person for themselves. I just think it's so important to leave a crack in the door so we can get to know each other. And yes, appropriateness is always a question, absolutely. But we don't have to shut that door and be completely unapproachable. I do remember, I've always said, you know, if you were a professor should have to be a student like every 2 years. They need to go take a class somewhere where they're anonymous and no one knows they're a professor, so they feel what that feels like to not be in power, to not be an authority figure. And remember what that feels like again? To keep them compassionate. I feel the same way about healers and teachers. I like having a teacher. I like being a student. It reminds me what it feels like to desperately need help or want help and get help, and to be a mess and to be a wreck, and to have someone give me a hand and not hold that over me in any power position or hold themselves up as some unattainable icon. Making yourself vulnerable appropriately, changing roles, especially if you're in a power position, like you're a parent. Do you know what it feels like to be a kid anymore? If you're a school teacher, do you remember what it feels like to be the kid who gets yelled at or frowned at or ignored or shunned? And if you don't, how can you help yourself remember to put yourself in the other person's shoes? I like to do that a lot. It keeps my heart open and helps me to soften up. When I did this work publicly, which I'd never done before, 2012, 2013, it was always word of mouth. I was not prepared for the onslaught of attacks and ego and competitiveness that came from the New Age community. If I was a regular therapist, I don't think I would have faced any of that. There's a lot of therapists out there, and nobody says, I want to be that therapist, but they say, I want to be that psychic, I want to be that energy worker, I want to channel, I want to be recognized for being spiritually advanced. And you have none of that in the world of being a licensed therapist. And I wish to God sometimes I had become a licensed therapist instead of rogue like I am. And man, it was murder, and it made me very hard, suspicious. My boundaries had razor wire on them. I had to wait for a year or two to find out if somebody was just trying to manipulate me, get close to me. They thought I had some inner circle. I watched people steal my business, destroy groups, and of course I let them because I walked into the circle naive, completely naive. I had one mentor who I would talk to and say, yes, this is what happens in this New Age industry. She ran a metaphysical bookstore and say, well, people came in and they took over my class and they started talking and teaching. And actually somebody did that in front of my own teacher who came out here. He said at one point to a question, I don't really have an answer for that. And there was a reason he said that. He doesn't always spoon feed you the answers. Well, someone else in the group who had only met me once or twice said, I have the answer. And she started teaching in front of my 83-year-old teacher of 40 years. And later we talked about it, and he said that had never happened to him before. And I said, well, welcome to my neighborhood. So in those cases, those years, me being authentic and open and vulnerable became an impossibility. I got slaughtered for it, and I got tough, and then I got overly tough, and now I'm in the process of unwinding the tough as much as possible while keeping my guard dogs on the perimeter. A lot of skills to learn. Oh, gosh. I don't know how people handle being an icon or famous or anything. Probably they have a community around them, which I don't. So why am I talking about all of this is I think I'm trying to say it's hard to be open and honest and yet appropriate and safe at the same time. It's like a lot of balls in the air. But I want to encourage you to try. Rather than walling people out, hiding dysfunctional secrets in the name of, we shouldn't talk about that. And yet to say to you also, be careful who you do open up to, because a lot of people, especially right now in this period of time and depending on where you live, cannot handle authenticity. I actually had some people out here in this area, more than one group, but I rode with two other people, rode horses. I made sure we talked about nothing. Shoes, shopping, movies, nothing. And one woman said to me, you're so different. Like, I can't even describe it. You're just different. And she stopped riding with me. And the other one said, not long after, there's something about you, like, I don't know, there's kind of like this level of honesty and just makes me so uncomfortable. And she stopped riding with me. And that's basically what's happened out in this area, which is why I would say I am completely been unsupported by humans for so long. We could look at this spiritually too. That's a whole other discussion, looking at, astrological, numerological, karmic transits, but that's another discussion altogether. I'm just saying it's really hard these days to be authentic. I had a problem doing it and staying safe, and even doing it, not doing it, trying to fit in and talk about nothing. It still showed up, and I still was shunned, basically. So I'm not saying any of this is easy, but if we want to change the quality of our culture, dare to be an outlier, dare to be different, dare to say something where somebody says, you shouldn't be talking about that, like, you shouldn't be talking about our father raping our sister or sleeping with our sister. Dare to be the one that breaks the silence. And yes, it's messy. And yes, I've said things about people and they say, I don't want to hear about that. It's like, well, they sat on the board of directors. You don't want to know that this is who was sitting on the board of directors? They still might be good on the board of directors. You can say, okay, now that I know that, I still like them on the board of directors. Or you might say, oh, that explains so many decisions that were made. Or you might say, I need to re-examine this. In other words, we allow the person to make grown-up decisions when we talk about things, instead of hiding them because of shame and secrecy that comes out of a dysfunctional family, or maybe even a dysfunctional culture right now. I think that's all I have to say for now. I hope this helps. Life Path Healings is still creeping along. Private sessions, classes, though in-person classes seem to be in an all-time low. Maybe people can't handle live interactions anymore. I don't know. We'll find out. I hope you stay tuned and look forward to meeting more of you. Adios for now.